Hi, December 31st, 2016. I hope nobody's watching this right now. I hope you're all doing something, whatever, something fun or whatever you find important to do. I'm chilling out with my friend Tony at his house, and we're going to meditate silently and go to sleep and then walk all day tomorrow to the ocean from his apartment, Brighton Beach. I've never been a big fan of New Year's, except when I was a kid. I have this nice memory of like watching the ball drop and listening to like Metallica, which I never really remember liking, but I think maybe the music video came out that year, and we danced to Obla Di Obla Da, and it was pretty exciting. Besides that, I've always thought it was such an arbitrary time. But you know, any marker of time passing is an interesting experience. So I made a list a while ago of all these different talks I wanted to do, and I decided that tonight, because of some other conversations that I've had in Facebook land and with other people, that I would talk for a moment, not very long, about this concept of fixed views. I was like thinking about this earlier today, and I was like, I'll do this whole chant for them in Pali, and I'm not going to do that. Oh, maybe I'll do it later though, because it is fun to do that. But this is something that, again, a lot of the stuff that I like about Buddhism that I've been introduced to over this last year. You know, a lot of people have been talking about how shitty 2016 was. And I don't know, 2015 was fucking horrible for me. So 2016 was really not that bad for me as it was for other people. But I also spent most of 2016 just deconstructing my ego. And as I was telling my mother during the 3-month retreat I was on, like, Buddhism can be kind of viewed as a baby out with a bathwater solution to a life of misery, in that if you don't have a self, there's nothing to suffer. And Buddhism says that it's not something you have to get rid of. You don't have to like work at getting rid of yourself. You just don't have a self. And as soon as you wake up to realize you don't have a self, then whole like boatloads of suffering bullshit just evaporate. But so does your sense of self. But anyway, a lot of the things that I like about Buddhism are things that I felt throughout my childhood, like innately understood about the world and felt very confused that other people didn't. So this might be a symbol, a signifier of reincarnation, and that I've spent way too many lives on this planet already, in this realm. I really like this planet though. Society I have trouble with, but I really like the trees and the rocks and shit, rivers. When I was a fish, remember when we were dinosaurs? Anyway, there's this concept in Buddhism where Buddha was really, really big on people not holding to fixed views. And I've not really studied a lot of his sutras, but there's this very short sutra that I chanted 35 times over the last 5 weeks of the retreat about metta, which is this practice of just training your heart to just love and be compassionate and kind to everyone, which, you know, I've been out of the retreat now for almost a month, and I really, you know, find that it's just not worth getting angry and hateful about things. It's, you know, it comes up and I'm like, yeah, it's not worth it. And that's part of the practice. You know, the friendliness is slightly different than just not getting hateful and angry, but if one of the ways they look at it is that if you're not defiled by hatred and anger, then your heart is just naturally loving and kind. So the Karunya Metta Sutra, like, we chanted it in Pali and then we chanted it in English, and my favorite part of it, translated into English, my favorite part of it is, so one should cherish all beings. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, freed from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision and being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. One of the ways that the Buddhists like to think about that is reincarnation this realm, this existence, samsara, human existence, and all the other realms that are in the delusion of separation, duality, us and them, you and me, it and not it, that and this, that you just are free of that forever, and you don't exist. You don't exist anyway, and you don't exist anymore. You're not going to come back into the world of delusion believing that you exist and there's something you can get and something you can attain and something you have to evolve out of and release, and all that shit is just done. But if you don't believe in reincarnation, you can also look at the worlds you get born into every moment, be they confusion or anger or fear or sadness, longing, frustration, lust, greed, hatred, delusion, that you're not born again into them if you don't hold to fixed views and have clarity of vision. So that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit, is the fixed views aspect of that, because it's something that's used a lot in Buddhism, and it's so simple, but it's so difficult. And I subtitled this talk, Ignorance and Delusion. On a regular human level, most people understand the concept of ignorance. And if you're, oh, that's so weird. Tony's listening to it in the other room, and I can hear my voice on the echo lag, sorry. In a regular human level, people are aware of ignorance and what ignorance means. A lot of people assign a value judgment to that, like, oh, he's just ignorant. Now, the problem with ignorance and why it's not useful to judge someone about ignorance is that when somebody's truly ignorant of something, they don't know they're ignorant. Like, ignorance is like this hermetic seal. Like, when you're ignorant, you don't know you're ignorant. And it's really tricky, but this is a place where the heart, when it's not angry and filled with ill will, the heart can just naturally be compassionate and loving, because when you see someone trapped in ignorance and they're just like, well, this is just what I believe the world to be, and you're like, yeah, you're lost in ignorance. And if you say that to someone, then you're being a dick, because they don't know they're ignorant, and it's not their fault. Like, that's a really important thing to understand, that people, it's not their fault that they're ignorant. And you might feel indignation right now when I say that. You might be like, oh, yes, it is their fault. They could educate themselves. You have to know you're ignorant to want to dispel your ignorance. And kind of the way that it works is that you don't know you're ignorant. And that ties in a lot with the self, that people believe they understand. I mean, in order to function and not just be a broken down, crying, schizophrenic mess, you have to believe that you are a functional person. You have to believe that you know how to live and what's right and wrong and what the truth is. And it's all arbitrary. So you can have, and I say this just as my life experience, having traveled the world, in the short amount of time that I've traveled the world, in the short amount of time I've been alive, I've seen so many different cultures and so many people within different cultures, within America, who completely believe different truths about reality. And they just believe that everybody believes the same thing they believe. So this is a common aspect of ignorance. Now, stepping into more Buddhist mindset, they believe that everything, that we always understand reality. That, and this is something, again, I believed as a kid, that you innately understand the essence of emptiness, that there's kind of no point to all the shit we get snarled up in all the time. Everybody's kind of aware of that, that there's, you know, that is really not important, and that nothing's really happening. And it's kind of weird to say this, because you're like, I've never felt like that, but there's like countless times throughout our lives that we have this little brink of the abyss yawning around us. There's this really great Louis C.K. video where he talks about this, like riding in his car and everybody wants to text all the time because they start to feel that little bit of loneliness or a little bit of just like emptiness start to surround them, and they're just like, I have to distract myself quickly. And that's kind of like how society functions. We have to distract ourselves quickly. You know, this realm of entertainment that we're in, we want things and we want to get away from things. We want to be happy. We don't want to be sad. We want the right lover and the right job and the right house. We want all these things, and it keeps us moving and it keeps the wheels turning. And that is a fundamental delusion, because in essence, and even like if you're Christian or any religion, if you're any religion that's monotheistic, and that includes a lot of things that a lot of people don't think are monotheistic, like, you understand that there's only one thing and it's God. You know, Buddhism doesn't believe in a God, so there's only one thing and it's nothing. There's nothing. That's all there is. That's not exactly the right way of saying that. But the days go by and we have a lot of grasping to try to avoid feeling this emptiness. That is a more willful form of ignorance called delusion. And delusion can just be on a base level delusion where we just make up shit to get through the days and to validate our egos and to make our life feel like it's important, justify our relationships with people. Again, one of the things that's really fascinating to me about this whole political climate is there are people that really believe one view and there's really people who really believe the other view, and they're totally really convinced that their views are real and true, and it's really easy to be like, no, that person's an asshole, fuck them, they're wrong, because they're invalidating my life. But they're validating their life, they're protecting their family, they're protecting their kids. And, you know, if you get into your heart, there's always a part of you that's like, yeah, you know, you can be hateful and believe that your life is worth more than someone else's. But you can also know that it's just a delusion, that we're all just people and we're all just really trying to get through the day and feel happy and feel safe and feel like we know what the fuck is going on. It's very complicated. We don't know what's going on. So delusion is a really, really intrinsic part of the human experience. We're constantly believing in total bullshit that we make up and that we're being fed by our teachers, the church, the parents, the boyfriends, girlfriends. You know, we're constantly being fed delusions to keep everything copacetic, keep everything moving. And this isn't a bad thing. You got to get through the day. You got to have the human experience. You know, one of the ways that I've lived most of my life since I've woken up, negligible there, but since I've woken up many years ago, is believing that I'm an enlightened being having a human experience. You know, I'm an infinite being. I'm one with everything. And so I'm being a human just to have the human experience, to feel the loss, the longing, the desire, the sensuality, the flavor, the smell. You can't have that when you're a ghost. You can't have that when you're a star. When you're human, you get to have all these wonderful experiences. You get to have the finite experience. But again, to believe in being a human, the meat, the blood and the meat in our bones, you have to really confuse your eternal self in order to get away with it, to really get satisfied by this game. So that gets to the title of this, which is fixed views. Like, to get through, to really believe in our delusions, we have to believe things to be true, believe we are a person and we have this history and we have this story. And the danger of fixed views, again, in this multidimensional, infinite, phenomenal existence that's constantly being created and destroyed and changing. It's changing quicker than, you know, I mean, you know, on a certain level that your body is this complex, like, constant flux and pump of change of cells and blood and breath. So, I mean, so on every level, everything is moving all the time. The solid walls like this, they're just like moving faster than anything can be imagined, all the little particles moving around, and it looks solid, you know. So it's really easy to believe that this realm is real and that you know what's true and what's not true and what's right and what's wrong. And to a certain degree, ethics are really important, even though I'm saying that there's no such thing as truth. And it really makes life much more simple if you stick to some kind of ethical code, so you're not confusing yourself and causing a lot of suffering and pain to yourself and other people all the time. But it's very important to notice, I mean, if you want to not cause suffering to yourself and other people, it's very important to notice when you believe in something as being true and as being real and as being right. And you, especially when you notice that you're defending that view or pressing that view on other people. Because that always hurts people and it always hurts you. And it sometimes makes you feel together with people. at the high price of making others others. I used the words earlier, like selfing and othering. Maybe I didn't say that in one of the videos, but I said it in something I was writing to somebody a couple weeks ago. That we use that in Buddhism and or in the retreats, and I thought it was hilarious. I love it that like it's what are we doing all the time? We're always selfing, and othering is an act of selfing. Like when you create others, you're doing it to fortify yourself. And it's such a high price to pay. The fixed views thing, like when you hold to a fixed view, when you're like, I am a man, I am a woman. I mean, I'm not even getting into trans politics here, but like when you believe anything about yourself, it comes with this gigantic amount of baggage. And this is something that you know innately. I mean, I believe that you know this innately, that you know, believing in anything comes with a gigantic amount of baggage. And well, you need to change clothes. You need something to snack on to the trip through life. So, I mean, some of the baggage is useful, you know, not to say that it's all a waste of time and energy, but the importance of this blather is for you to understand, this is the gift for the new year or for whenever or for right now, to remember that anything you believe you can let go of. And not to say that you need to be a pushover or you need to allow yourself to be programmed by other people's beliefs, but it also protects you from a lot of the hateful rhetoric garbage that's out there, is understanding that everything is just a view. And currently, what are there, like 8 billion people on the planet, not to mention all the birds and snakes and spiders. we're all like little like undulating experience vessels. I'm live. Yeah, sorry, somebody just said you're live? Yeah, I'm live right now. We're all just like experiencing vessels, like we're, you know, coming out of the earth, coming out of eternity, coming out of a God form or out of nothing to experience existence. And we all have different viewpoints. And if you really want to cling to yourself and be like, but this is my viewpoint and it's true, that's fine. But it will hurt you and it will hurt other people. And you don't have to believe me. You can just check it out. You can just, that's what they like to say, you can check it out. Just spend time in noticing how it feels when you become righteous and indignant, or when you cause someone else to become righteous and indignant because you tell them their viewpoint is wrong. It's incredibly useful to experience letting it go. And I know that, I mean, I'm so often when I've talked to people who have really rigid views, they push all these views upon me that I'm not actually doing. They're like, but you believe this and you're doing that. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting, because I'm not at all. You're just pushing something on me like I'm a character in your play. And I know that like when I first started studying astrology was the first time that I really got an inkling. Actually, no, it was before that. It was another one of those New Year's Eves where I was talking to one of my friends and I said, every word you've ever learned, you learned differently than I learned it. The situation that taught you to really understand what that word meant was different than mine. So the envelopment, that was the word I used, the envelope of that word was mailed to you from another continent than I got my envelope from. And that was the beginning of my nihilism, of being like, God, every single person's words have a totally different meaning. But when I started studying astrology, it was the first time that I really understood that everybody's experiencing the world from a different vantage point. And so often before I started studying astrology, I would be like, why don't you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying it clearly and I'm saying it over and over and over the best way I know how. And they just wouldn't understand. And when I started studying astrology, I was like, oh, there's like whole different ways that people experiencing reality. They're just totally experiencing it completely different than me. And I'm experiencing it in this way. And I did research to understand the way that astrology talked about how this experience was happening. And then when I would do charts for other people, I'd be like, oh, so are you experiencing reality like this? And so often they'd be like, yeah. And that really helped me communicate. And funnily enough, that's what Geminis with Virgo risings would want to do. We really want to figure out how to communicate properly. That's really important to us. And I first learned how to let go of my fixed views, not just like be like, before that I was like, okay, so this is what I believe to be true, and I have to figure out how to make that communicable to you who's having a different experience. So that was the inkling of starting to understand fixed views. But then I remember when I started really studying Mercury retrograde, which a lot of people don't care about, but hey, we're in a Mercury retrograde right now. And again, I'm a Gemini with a Virgo rising, which are both ruled by Mercury, so it's a big deal for me. And I remember this boy I was totally in love with, who was a Virgo, kind of. We were in Lyon, France, walking on a road the night, and I remember there were lots of houses along the road, and you could see down into a valley, and I think you could see the moon, and definitely the stars. We had bought a whole bunch of pastries and ended up eating ourselves sick on them. But I remember that I loved him, and that I was trying to say something to him. I knew it was Mercury retrograde, and I had been studying Mercury retrograde, and I was trying to say something to him, and he just wasn't understanding. And I said it over and over, and it was making him really irritated, and it was making me irritated. And then I remembered that I loved him, and that was the important part here. I was like, oh wait, forget it. I love you. And he was like, what? No, you were just trying to tell me something. And I was like, yeah, but I'm making you irritated, and I don't want to make you irritated because I love you. So it's totally not important. And I remember in my mind, I thought, whatever it is that I'm saying right now doesn't matter if it's going to destroy my friendship. Even for this moment, not like forever destroy my friendship, but destroy my friendship for this evening, because it's a beautiful evening. We have all these delicious pastries to eat. We're in a gorgeous town, Lyon, and you know. And I was like, I don't want to make this irritating and annoying. I want to feel good, and I want him to feel good, and I want him to know I love him. And I love him enough to let go of being right. And I love him enough to let go of needing to be understood. And it was so amazing because I just let go, and then we were fine. You know, once I let go, he realized he could let go, and we were fine. We just were walking and having a beautiful evening. And that's maybe a romantic example. But you can make that choice, not just in Mercury retrograde, but at any time you notice that your fixed views are starting to cause friction. Because whatever your viewpoint is, whatever your truth is, it really doesn't fucking matter. Especially not if you're hurting people. And you can justify it by saying, like, well, hurting people you love or people you don't care about. But ultimately, the more you are able to be in a constant state of love, you're not in a state of defense, you're not in a state of fear, you're not in a state of panic. If your heart is always open and kind and loving, then you never have to worry about having to defend yourself. Because really, I mean, you can like dissolve any arrow in love, friend, kindness. And especially if you don't have a self, then you don't have to worry about getting killed by the arrow. You're just like, it's so much better to not worrying about causing more friction. I wasn't going to tell this story now, but I'm going to tell this because I was thinking about it earlier today. There's a story that was told a few times at the retreat about the Dalai Lama, and I just thought this was, crying. I thought this was really powerful. So the Dalai Lama escaped Tibet once upon a time. There was this nightmare that happened there. Political nightmare. Invasion. Torture. He knew this monk. He thought he wasn't a very amazing monk. He was just this average monk, no big deal. Dalai Lama came from a town, he said, that a lot of the people there were very angry. And so he practiced throughout his life to not be angry. He practiced a lot to not be angry, but he got angry a lot. And it's really important in Buddhism to not get angry, because when you get angry, it covers your heart and your mind, and it turns you into a separated dualistic monster. So you just, you really want to like be watchful about that. So Dalai Lama's had a lot of trouble with being angry. He's practiced not being angry. This was like, I don't know, 10 or 20 years later, after he fled Tibet, he ran into this monk again, who he had known in Tibet, who was a not interesting, not remarkable person at all. And he's talking to the monk, and the monk's like, oh, yeah, well, I got arrested and I got put in jail, and I really felt like I was in danger. And the Dalai Lama said, what, in danger of being tortured? And the monk said, no, they tortured me a lot. They tortured me for months on end. I felt like I was really in danger of getting angry with them. And the Dalai Lama was like, You didn't get angry with them? And he's like, no, I was really close. Many times I felt myself getting close to getting angry with them, but I didn't. It was okay. You know, and he was telling this to the Dalai Lama because it's like his king, and he's like, I want you to know that I didn't let you down. I didn't get angry. And the Dalai Lama's like, I've been getting angry every day of my life since I was a kid, and I've worked really hard to not be angry. And here's this totally non-remarkable person being like, yeah, they tortured me, and I didn't let myself get angry with them. So it's always an option, you know, and it's not something you have to aim for or strive for, but just knowing that it's an option is really important, because when you notice your mind start to hate yourself or hate the world or hate the year, you always have the option to let that go, to just stop feeding it. Fuck it. It's not worth generating that kind of hatred in your life. You can make beautiful pearls of covering misery with shitloads of reasons why you should hold on to it. But you can just kick it out, let it go. You don't even have to reject it. It's not even about kicking it out or rejecting it. It's just about not feeding it and changing the focus. And again, like a lot of times letting go of the fixed views, because you yourself never know when you're ignorant and delusional unless you're really, really, really mindful. I mean, it's much better to, I mean, if somebody tells you you're ignorant and delusional, it almost never will make sense to you, because if you can't see it yourself, it doesn't make any sense. Which is one of the reasons meditation is important, but you know, there's lots of different ways to see your own ignorance and delusion, and it probably happens a lot of the time. So if you start, maybe you can make a New Year's resolution for 2017 and just kind of set an intention to be aware of when you notice that you've been ignorant, when you notice you've been delusional, when you notice you've been clinging to fixed views that really aren't important. And notice the feeling of letting it go and being at peace. Like really just being at peace. Because the more you're at peace, the more people can be at peace around you. Because you're not unconsciously attacking them and setting out landmines and barbed wire. And regardless of who's in power or who's an asshole or who's telling you you don't have the right to exist, you can always be at peace. Even if somebody's trying to torture you and beat the shit out of you, you can be at peace. And that's not only a safety you can always take refuge in, but a gift that you can give to the world around you by being someone who's not causing harm, by panicking and freaking out, but setting an example. I think that's basically what I wanted to say. No champagne tonight. No parties, no loud music, no drugs, no hopes for the future. Just being here. And may this benefit all beings. May we all know peace, and remember peace, and remember kindness, and remember love, and release fixed views and have clarity of vision, and live with pure open hearts. All right, go have fun, kids. Knock 'em out. Have a good new year, or whatever. I'll talk to you later. I'm gonna go be silent for a while.